Welcome back. Now more from UTopia.
Recent studies have estimated that human populations in Utah will double between the years 2018 and 2050. 75% of this population lives along the Wasatch Front, prime habitat for deer. This presents some conflicts of interest that is increasing along with the increase in development.
I get a lot of phone calls every day about people that have problems with deer, and this new urban deer program that the state is involved with, that we started up a few years ago, really is helping cities address these urban deer problems. Instead of addressing it, trying to help homeowner by homeowner, we're able to address this really at a citywide level, which for urban deer herd, that's the only way really to tackle this problem. It's bigger than just one homeowner, and it allows cities to pick the options that are best for them. They can choose lethal and non-lethal, and each city is different. Every city I work with is picking different options. Back in 2010, the division came in and was going to sharpshoot some deer out of Bountiful City. Sharpshooting is a traditional method used by state agencies nationwide to help reduce populations. However, it was really seen by the public as being unsafe, inhumane for deer in Bountiful. And so at that point, we had to step back as a division, figure out, okay, we have this problem, how do we solve this? What are some tools that we can use? And translocation is one of those tools we're testing out. Our suspended trap is called a drop net, and that's exactly what it does. It's a net that drops. That is really helpful in areas where maybe we have a larger herd of deer and we want to capture a larger group. Any deer that we have captured, we gather up our volunteers and we will actually go into the trap with the deer and put her on her side and hobble her, blindfold her. We don't use any mobilization drugs on these deer. Then we process them. We test them for chronic wasting disease. We give them ear tags. And then for the research project, we give them radio transmitters so we can follow them.
If you talk to individuals in communities, there's people that view deer as a negative, and they associate deer with a lot of loss. And on the other end of that pendulum, you meet individuals that love the deer, and they love that connection with nature. And somewhere in there, we have to find a balance. And so I think in working with the public and the cities, we'll do our best to strike that balance in each community.
Another animal that keeps the division busy are the urban Canada geese that nest on golf courses, city parks, and prison yards along the Wasatch Front. Since 2006, over 10,000 geese have been banded and moved, some because of foraging damage and the massive amounts of fecal matter they leave in their wake among the myriad of golf courses in the area, and at the prison in Bluffdale, where geese repeatedly set off outdoor motion detector alarms in the complex. The geese relocation is scheduled for June, when the geese molt and grow new feathers. It is during this time they cannot fly away, and the goslings are big enough for banding. Most of these geese are moved to the eastern shores of the Great Salt Lake. Less than 3% of the young geese will return to the city. This is because they imprint on other wild geese who are not urban. The adults are translocated to northeastern Utah to provide separation and get them further away from the city. Nuisance wildlife calls received by the division correlate to location and season. On the Wasatch Front, it's mostly geese, deer, and raccoons. During the summer in southeast Utah, it's black bears.
We've looked at population estimates over the last decade or so, and bear populations have been growing. We're seeing bears in areas where historically we had bears, but haven't, in the last decade had a lot, and they're starting to show up again. And so the population overall seems to be doing really well.
In 2017, The division rescued 7 black bear cubs that were either abandoned or orphaned. The black bear is currently the only species of bear that occurs naturally in Utah. Grizzly bear populations in Utah were vanquished in the 1920s. Contrary to its name, the black bear is not always black. The species varies in color, from reddish to light brown to black.
If you're going to re-release a cub, you need to make sure it puts on a lot of weight, and so they do a really good job of making sure that they get plenty to eat. There's also a lot of things inside the pens that they can play with and climb on. They hide food, so they have to kind of forage around, and those bears will come in about 30 pounds and leave usually 100 pounds heavier. And they need that for that first winter to kind of, when they hibernate, they lose a lot of weight. And so that's our goal when we bring them up.
These bear cubs were released in wilderness areas around the southern part of Utah, far from population centers. It's important to remember that bears that get into campgrounds and believe it to be a good source of food must be euthanized. Once they figure out that campgrounds are sources for dinner, it's difficult to train them otherwise.
The conclusion to our story after these messages.